I already touched the topic of fairness in society a couple of times. Colorblindness, how we treat people, is treating people equally fair or not fair? And today I will touch this topic again. I will be talking about tolerance and I will be talking about ignoring some parts of life of other people. I will also provide you a triangle of difficulty of life in modern society. What do I mean by that? More about that in a moment. But obviously before we begin, I have to tell you that this is Yury Experience, and here I share my various experiences about different topics. I currently upload one piece of content per week, and if you enjoy this piece of content, please drop a like, subscribe to the channel, do what is possible on platform of your choice. Let's go. And my opening statement is it is very complicated to treat people equally and or fairly if we don't ignore some parts of other people's life. But on the other hand, on a lot of occasions, ignoring something in other people's lives can lead to some discrimination towards these people, which vice versa leads to not treating people equally. Let me provide you this triangle of difficulty of life. I'm not sure how to call it properly. Maybe there are some people who are studying sociology. Anyways, they know how to call it properly if there is anything like that in sociology. First point, it is treat all people as good as possible and all people as equally to each other as possible, which means on a lot of occasions, as I already mentioned, ignore your own thoughts about putting these people in specific boxes, ignore basically some stuff around these people, some attributes of these people, some labels around these people, and treat the people independent of these labels. Another point of the triangle is respect people's lives. Respect the fact that people have some struggles that happen because of some of the attributes that they have, that happen because some of the labels that these people have. Some people have huge problems because of various labels that these people have, like disabilities or sometimes race in different countries, or maybe your status in the society. That can lead to your problems, to problems existing in your life in the society. And third point of this triangle is the one that I haven't mentioned in most of the videos up till now, and it is you personally have to stay safe, you have to stay senile, you have to stay alive. Because sometimes acting towards some specific person based on the labels that we assign to that person is a safety concern. And there are a couple of examples for that, and I will provide some of them later in the video. But the point is, sometimes it is important to be cautious of other people, I would call it like that. Better safe than sorry. And then we have this triangle. Treat all people more or less equally, more or less good, more or less respectfully. Then we have respect all people's backgrounds, which is not the same. It can be the same, but it is not the same. And then we have the third point, be safe, remain alive. And a lot of decisions in our life, based on my opinion, my personal opinion, nothing more than that, happen somewhere inside of this triangle. Sometimes we do our best to treat all people more or less same, independent of the background of these people, if we are feeling safe. Because as soon as we don't feel safe, we on a lot of occasions forget about treating equal, we forget about respecting that person's background, we just deal in a way so we stay safe. And sometimes it makes more sense to respect person's background, for example, to treat a person with disability in some way because that person has disability and not equally to other people. Also because that can be a safety concern to you. For example, if person has anger issues, that is a psychological problem in that specific case, and then you treat that person or you act around that person knowing the fact that that person has anger issues. So you don't treat that person equally to everybody else, and maybe not even what a lot of people would consider good, but you treat that person in a way that respects, technically, that person's attributes, labels, and also it helps you to stay safe. And now we have to navigate through society. We have various people around us, and basically to each person in each situation we apply this triangle and think, okay, Like, can I act as I always act, or do I need to consider something? Do I need to consider my personal safety? Do I need to consider attributes of that person, labels of that person? I will provide you a couple of more radical examples, but I hope at least that these examples will help you to understand what I'm talking about. And the first example is very critical, especially for English-speaking countries, and it is the concept of race. But actually, let's go away from the race, let's go to ethnicity. Because at the end of the day, race is nothing more than a social construct, and although the social construct is important in a lot of countries, but let's just go away from there, especially including the fact that I don't have a lot of experience with race discrimination, I have more experience with ethnic discrimination. And overall, people nowadays are saying that we shall behave towards people of all ethnicities equally. It doesn't matter what ethnicity you come from, we shall treat that person fairly, we shall act fairly with that person and with all other people from various ethnicities. So basically we have the first point. We do equal treatment to everybody, fair treatment to everybody. We don't consider the label of that person being participant in some specific group, and we also don't use the label of our personal safety, at least in most of the situations. At least as long as that person doesn't use that person's ethnic card. Like, for example, some specific ethnicity is especially good at something, for example, Italian food. Like, that person somehow uses the card of that person being Italian and saying, yeah, I know how to do pizza and your pizza is bullshit because pizza that I know how to do is better. And now we need to think, okay, is it actually important that that person is an Italian? Actually, if you ask me personally, no. What is important, can that person do a good pizza? Is that person a good specialist in this topic? Because otherwise, the label of that person being Italian is not important. It doesn't bring anything to the conversation. And I use this like very strange and maybe even a little bit foolish topic of food, but there are a lot of countries and societies that are very proud of their food, but B, pretty much same stuff can be applied to a lot of discussions when we are talking about ethnocentric problems and racial problems. When people are talking about their personal experience, isn't important to consider their label of being a part of that specific group? Is it important to treat some person differently because that person belongs to that ethnic group because of the fact that that ethnic group was discriminated, for example, in the past, or maybe the opinion of that person, of that group on some subject was completely thrown out of the window during the conversations prior to now. Or we treat everybody equally and we don't care. We ignore basically the fact that that person belongs to some ethnic group and has some background which may influence current conversation or current situation. Another example, status and or financial situation, and overall treating all people equally based on their status or independent basically of their status is no problem. As long as these people don't earn more than you, because there is this phrase, eat the rich, for example, that a lot of people find morally acceptable. It is morally acceptable to hate some people because of the label that was assigned to them or which they assigned to themselves. So basically in that case we don't treat all people equally, we treat people based on the label. And on the other hand, very poor people, or for example homeless people, a lot of people would say you that meeting some person who is homeless during the night at midnight on the street is a huge safety concern. And I wouldn't stand here and saying you no, it is not. It is sometimes, depending on the situation, a safety concern, and yes, in that case you apply that label. You think about the fact, okay, that person can be my personal problem for my safety. Status maybe is not even an important issue there, but maybe hygiene, or maybe how that person behaves, or maybe how that person moves, but status on a lot of occasions has something to do with it, because a lot of Poor people, for example, can't afford medical care, can't afford psychological care, have various problems, not because they are born with it, but because their life led to them being like that, them having that, whatever that is. Obviously, in my personal opinion, it is not a reason to treat these people badly. Like, why would I treat a person who has difficult life situation badly? But on the other hand, is it fair not to consider the situation? Is it fair to ask your friend, like if we go away from the word poor but we go to the word poorer, is it fair to ask your friend who you know earns way less money than you to go with you on a vacation that your friend probably can't afford, and then saying you are a bad friend because you don't share your time with me, because you don't go to vacation with me? Like, maybe there you also need to consider the fact that that person is not equal to you in that regard, in financial situation regard, and maybe there it is more humane, I think, to act differently because that person is different to you and has some other labels applied to that, and one of these labels is financial situation. Last example, just interesting example in my personal opinion, is people under influence of alcohol. Like, on one hand, we say again, treat all people equally, and we start from this. This is a starting point for a lot of conversations. Let's treat all people equally, good, fairly. In this case, like, shall we ignore the fact that the person is under influence of alcohol? Like, if you see the person coming towards you during the night who is like really shaking and having something in that person's hand, like, will you ignore it? I personally think it wouldn't be a smart idea to do that, because that is a safety concern. On the other hand, if you are sitting in a club and you are seeing the person who is very drunk and just sitting and not doing anything, what shall you do? Shall you just treat that person as every other person who is sitting in the club? Or shall you maybe go to people who are working at the club and saying, you know what, we have a problematic person there, not the person that is problematic in terms of anger issues or whatnot, but that person maybe has problems with their health right now and maybe shall go to the hospital. And another example, for example, you have a party with friends and they're like mostly your friends, and one of the friends gets drunk and does something that you don't find appropriate, and afterwards a lot of people say he or she or that person was drunk, and that's why it is okay for that person to do whatever that person did. But if that person wouldn't be drunk, wouldn't be less okay or more okay, how this label makes it okay, it makes our treatment of the situation different. How it is okay for that person under the alcohol influence to act differently, to act in a way that we consider not morally appropriate, but maybe if that person wouldn't be under influence of alcohol, it would not be okay. So is our treatment of the same person in different states equal? Do we treat the person which is under influence of alcohol and without influence of alcohol equally, whereas that is the same person? I personally think no. Which brings me to the end of this video and to this idea. This triangle is not something that I'm talking about not doing. So don't ignore this triangle. Don't try to treat all people equally, or only care about labels of people, or only care of your personal safety concerns like all the time without considering actual context. It is to consider. All three of these points, in my personal opinion, shall be considered all the time, passively or actively. After some exercise, some mental exercises, you can do it passively pretty good. It is possible, it is needed, it is something that we find as a society, something important for the society, for interaction with each other. My point is, it is way more difficult than a lot of people think. Depending on person's background, depending on how that person was growing up, depending on the family of that person, school of that person, depending on various people that were in the life of that person, these All 3 points will be of various importance to that person, and what that person decides to put where, which interaction that person decides to put where in this triangle will be different. The importance of labels for that person will be different. What labels are important and what labels are not important and can be ignored is different. What is personal safety concern and what is everyday life will be different. And basically, what is a fair treatment, what is equal treatment, and how fair and equal shall we treat everybody will be different for each person depending on that person's upbringing. Which leads me to basically the same point that I'm talking about in a lot of videos. Be patient and have proper communication with various people, have proper conversations with various people, and don't put your own expectations to yourself on other people without a reason. Obviously, there are situations that are definitely not morally appropriate or maybe going against the law, but overall, people are different not without a reason. People are different because of various sexual reasons, hundreds of them. And that's how life goes. And that is why we have rules of society, although I don't like a lot of them. And that is why we have these 3 important points that all of us has to consider all the time. So we can exist as a society. That is pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this piece of content. If it is the case, please drop a like and also subscribe to the channel. You can also do whatever is possible on the platform of your choice. I see you next week. Have a great week. Yeah.